Like speaking, writing is a form of communication. When speaking, we can rely on pauses and changes in the tone of our voices to get our point across. However, when writing, to enhance our communication, we must rely upon punctuation. Skillful use of commas, semicolons, colons, parentheses, and dashes go a long way in making what you write more easily understood. Let's take a few minutes to explore the mechanics of punctuation. This stuff is not all that interesting to talk about, but knowing and applying punctuation rules is part of the writing process. It would be a shame if the effectiveness of your paper was compromised by poor punctuation. Let's start with the comma. The comma tells the reader to pause, but there are rules for comma usage. Remember clauses? A clause is a collection of words that contains a subject and predicate, but is not necessarily a sentence. A clause that can stand alone is an independent clause. All sentences are independent clauses. Dependent clauses cannot stand alone. They do not express complete thoughts. You should always use a comma to separate a dependent clause from an independent clause. A comma can be used to join two independent clauses, but a coordinating conjunction is required. Conjunctions are simple words that connect two independent clauses. They include and, but, nor, or, so, yet, and for. You should use a comma to separate introductory clauses from the main part of a sentence. Introductory clauses are dependent clauses that provide background information or in some way set up the main part of the sentence. Introductory clauses usually start with words like after, although, as, because, before, if, since, though, until, and when. This sentence presents with several uses of the comma. First, a comma is typically placed after transitional words and phrases. Transitional words and phrases include however, therefore, nonetheless, also, otherwise, finally, instead, thus, of course, above all, for example, in other words, as a result, on the other hand, in conclusion, and in addition. Next, note that the second word in this sentence starts an introductory clause. Introductory clauses are always separated by a comma. Third, within the introductory clause are a series of elements. When writing a series of elements, each element is separated by a comma. And finally, you should place a comma before and after non-essential components of a sentence. Non-essential components add value and clarification to a sentence, but are not required. If you remove the non-essential component, the sentence can still stand alone. Try reading this sentence without the shaded non-essential component, and you will see that the sentence does indeed still stand alone. The use of the semicolon is a little tricky. The semicolon is used to join two independent clauses when the second clause restates the first, or when the two clauses are of equal emphasis. The semicolon is also used to separate elements in a series when the elements contain commas. You should use a colon to join two independent clauses when you wish to emphasize the second clause. Also, you can use a colon after a clause when it is followed by a list, a quotation, or other ideas directly related to the clause. If you want to place more emphasis on content than a comma does, you can enclose the content in parentheses. Parentheses are also used to set off non-essential material such as dates, clarifying information, or sources from a sentence. Dashes are used to place even more emphasis on content than parentheses. So commas, semicolons, colons, parentheses, and dashes add flavor to your writing. They help clarify and emphasize content. But don't forget to follow the usage rules. Appropriate punctuation makes your paper easier to read and helps get your point across.